In his book, Duhigg introduces the concept of the habit loop, which is the neurological process that occurs when you do something repeatedly so that it becomes almost automatic. According to Duhigg, every habit consists of three parts: a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is the trigger that tells your brain to switch to automatic mode. For example, it could be a specific time of day, a certain location, or even an emotional state. Once the cue is received, the brain then activates the routine, which is the actual behavior that makes up the habit. Let's say you see an email from a friend asking for feedback on a project. You might open it and read it. That's the routine. Finally, there's the reward, which can be anything from a sense of satisfaction to a tangible benefit like completing a task. In the case of reading an email, the reward might be the sense of accomplishment you feel after finishing it. When these three elements come together in a loop, they form a habit, and over time, the loop becomes more and more automatic until eventually you don't even have to think about what you're redoing. This is because the cue and the reward become neurologically intertwined, creating a powerful sense of craving and anticipation. Every time you see an email in your inbox, your brain automatically starts to look for ways to make it happen. Duhigg uses a simple example to explain this concept. Imagine a rat running through a maze and sees a piece of cheese at the end. The rat will naturally want to run to the cheese, but it doesn't know exactly how to get there. So it starts exploring different paths until it finds the one that leads to the reward. Once it figures out the quickest route to the cheese, it will automatically take that path every time because the cue site of the cheese and the reward become neurologically linked. That's how habits are formed, and it's the same process that happens in our brains when we repeat any behavior over and over again. In his book, Duhigg introduces the idea that bad habits are not just character flaws or willpower issues, but neurological mistakes. To correct them, we need to understand the habit loop and apply the golden rule of habit change. This rule states that you can't just try to stop a bad habit and hope for the best. Instead, you have to replace it with a new habit that satisfies the same craving in a more productive way. To do this, you need to keep the old cue and deliver the old reward without engaging in the old routine. In other words, you need to substitute the bad habit with a new one that offers the same benefits while avoiding the drawbacks. Duhigg explains that the reason why this works is because every habit has a cue, a routine, and a reward. And by changing the routine, you can keep the cue and reward intact while delivering a more desirable outcome. For example, if you're trying to stop smoking, you can't just try to ignore the cravings that come over you when you're in a social setting. Instead, you need to replace the habit with something else that gives you the same reward, such as connecting with people and feeling part of a group. This can be achieved by joining a club or volunteering for a cause that you're passionate about. By doing so, you satisfy the underlying need that's driving the habit without engaging in the destructive behavior. Another example is if you're trying to stop eating too much sugar, you can't just try to avoid sweets. Instead, you need to replace the habit with a healthier alternative that satisfies the same craving for sweetness. One way to do this is to start consuming natural sources of sugar like fruits and vegetables, which provide essential nutrients while reducing the intake of processed sugars.